I've taken down some notes in terms of specific questions that people have asked me that I'd like to address, because as we go forward with this process, as we develop this YouTube channel, I want this to become a more interactive approach rather than me just lecturing about different topics. I want to be able to hear from you. I want to know what topics you want to hear about, what specific questions that you have, so that I can not only address them, but so that the content of this channel reflects what your concerns are. I want this to be about you. I want you to be able to be as well informed about the things that are most important to you as it pertains to your health care as we move forward. We'll be starting in just a moment. Question number one, is it safe to have our kids vaccinated 12 years of age and older? Well, there have been some problems, if you will, or some episodes of a symptom or a syndrome called myocarditis, which is inflammation of the heart muscle, that's been seen predominantly, when it does occur, although it occurs very rarely, in adolescent age males aged 16 to 23. What that really is a response to the heart muscle to the inflammatory response of your immune system ramping up to fight against the virus. When you get your vaccination, whether you're 12 years old or whether you're 20 years old or whether you're 60 years old, most people who get vaccinated develop some side effects. The side effects are actually not only expected, but they're something that we should be really excited about having, even though they're not pleasant to go through. What they indicate is that your body's immune system has actually started to do what it is that you're trying to get it to do by becoming vaccinated. It's developing antibodies, and specifically developing antibodies against the protein that the vaccine is stimulating your cells to produce. Now, in the case of these children that have developed myocarditis, that immune response presents as an inflammatory reaction in your body. That's why when you experience the side effects, those side effects are related to inflammation. You have body aches, you develop low-grade fever, you can develop fatigue. All of those are symptoms related to diffuse inflammation in your body. Now, myocarditis is just inflammation that is specific to the muscle of the heart. Although it's occurring very rarely, one of the things that's very encouraging is that, number one, it indicates a good immune response, but number two, that it's self-limited, it does not require any treatment, and there are no long-term sequelae to the myocarditis that occurs. Just like the side effects from the vaccine. They can be quite distasteful while you're going through them, but they're not life-threatening, and they don't last long in general. So that's one reason why, even though there's the potential for this that's been in the news and has been raised as a question in the community, it's not something that should deter you from getting your children vaccinated. Again, specifically with this new Delta variant that is targeting younger, healthier people, it's even more important now that as we get ready to go into the fall and then the winter, that as many adolescents and young adults are immunized as possible to try and prevent additional sickness and potentially additional death that could be avoided. Question number two that I've gotten, and this relates back to a question that we discussed in earlier videos, but I want to reiterate it. If I've already had COVID-19, do I really need to get vaccinated? I don't want to go through those symptoms again that I experienced when I was sick. Well, the answer to the question is yes. The reason why the answer is yes is because the variant that you had when you were actually sick and the antibodies that you developed from that native sickness are going to be specific to the variant that you were exposed to. We're facing new variants now. So those antibodies that you had likely will not be fully protective against exposure and or sickness to the new variant. Unlike the vaccine is not variant specific. They've already done the studies, they've done the research, and this new Delta variant is indeed protected by both Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, the mRNA vaccines, that target that spike protein on the surface of the virus that prevent it from accessing your cells and causing sickness. Question number 3 that I was given. Well, once again, why is it that certain subpopulations seem to be the ones that are getting sicker and dying at a higher rate, specifically African Americans? Do you think that this was something that was developed to try and wipe out the African American population? Well, the answer to that, once again, is no. I don't believe that for a minute. But what I do believe is that African Americans in this country are more susceptible to a number of different disease processes. A lot of that has to do with some of the underlying causes that make us more susceptible to infection in general and immune-mediated infections in general. For instance, obesity. If you look at the numbers, the obesity statistics in this number show that the highest group in the subpopulation of the United States that are affected by obesity and morbid obesity are African Americans, followed by Mexican Americans. Same thing is true for diabetes, which is an obesity-related illness. Same thing is true for hypertension. Same thing is true for certain malignancies. Same thing is true for certain autoimmune diseases. It has a lot to do with our lifestyle, has a lot to do with, in some ways, our culture and our cultural beliefs. You know, just as I'm seeing there's a lot of pushback in the African American community against getting vaccinated, that stems a lot from distrust of the medical community itself, the medical system, the profession of medicine, because medicine has not always been kind to the African American population. And that's left a legacy of distrust. As a result of that distrust, we're much less likely to access the healthcare system until things have really gotten out of control. And that is what puts us in a position where we're at greater risk for more serious consequences of problems that could have been dealt with and prevented if we had accessed the system at an earlier point. If we were willing to and trusting enough to follow the advice of healthcare professionals who may have tried to direct us in a path that was different from what we grew up with, but would ultimately lead to a healthier life and more longevity, less suffering, and less morbidity. So no, I don't think this is something that was engineered to be targeted against African Americans. I think that we as a people need to do a better job of identifying early risk factors for disease and doing what we need to do to try and reverse those risk factors so that we don't have to follow along these same patterns of being the group in this country that is the greatest risk for sickness and early death. Another question that I've been approached with most recently is the idea of, if you're fully vaccinated, is it safe for you to be out and about without wearing a mask, particularly in public places? Well, now that many states have dismantled some of the legislation that have made masks a mandate in certain areas, they are rolling back a lot of the restrictions in terms of crowd sizes. They rolled back a lot of the restrictions in terms of mandatory social distancing. It would be easy for you to believe that because the government has pushed back on those things, that everything is good and we can do what we want to do and we no longer have to take precautions. Well, don't let the legislation override your common sense. If you are in an environment where you have no idea who's vaccinated and who's not vaccinated, where you have no idea who may be a carrier of this viral infection and who may not be a carrier of this viral infection, if you're in an environment where you know it's going to be virtually impossible for you to maintain a safe social distance, you need to have your mask on. You still need to be able to wash your hands and sanitize your hands frequently. Because even though you're vaccinated, vaccination does not mean that you can't get sick. It certainly doesn't mean that you can't catch the infection and carry it to other people who may not have been vaccinated. The vaccine is 95 to 98% effective of keeping you from becoming sick if you contract the virus again. However, 95 to 98% is not 100%. That leaves 2 to 5% of people who have been fully vaccinated can still get sick, can still end up hospitalized, and can still suffer death as a result of this viral infection. So use common sense. If you're in an environment where you potentially can be at risk of being contacted by somebody who's got the virus, practice the proper precautions. Wear your mask, wear it correctly, make sure that you're sanitizing your hands when you go in and out of those environments, and keep your hands out of your face as often as you possibly can. I want to say thank you for joining me. Thank you for tuning in to the YouTube channel. Please hit like, hit subscribe, and share this video so that we can spread the word, spread the information, and hopefully people will hear something and learn something that'll move them in a direction to helping themselves and helping each other, making our community safer, making our community healthier. God bless you. You've got questions, I've got answers. Welcome to Getting Understanding with Dr. Darrell Ellis. As usual, I'm your host, Dr. Darrell Ellis, and I'm going to be talking to you a little bit more about what's going on in the world of COVID here in the United States. At our last video, we talked a little bit about the Delta variant. We talked about what makes it a little bit different than the prior strains of COVID-19, how much more infectious it is, how much more deadly it is, and we want to just kind of invite additional questions. We put that out there at our last video, and I've gotten some questions that I'd like to address. Hopefully some of these answers will resonate beyond just the person who asked the question and be able to get some more people who are a little bit more at ease with getting vaccinated so that we can start increasing those numbers, increasing that percentage of our population that is in the vaccinated group, so that we can decrease the risk of spread of this very virulent and very dangerous viral infection. Number one, I had a question from a person online who asked, because I have a history of allergies to certain medications, allergies to certain foods, should I not get the vaccine? Well, the answer is no. The reason why the answer is no is that the recommendations are if you have severe allergies to the point where you have to carry an EpiPen with you because of a prior history of anaphylaxis. Anaphylaxis being a very severe allergic reaction that can result in loss of life, where you develop significant inflammation of the airway. You're unable to breathe on your own. Your blood pressure drops out and you require resuscitation. Now that's the type of allergy that we warn against you getting vaccinated, not just against COVID-19, but against virtually all vaccines. The advantage that you have with the COVID-19 vaccine, however, is that every single vaccination center, whether it's in a physician's office or whether it's in a local pharmacy, has to and is required to have what they call an anaphylaxis team on board, meaning that after you receive that vaccination, you're going to be required to sit and wait for a period of 10 to 15 minutes to make sure that you don't have any kind of an anaphylactic reaction. If you do, if you start developing difficulty with breathing, if you start becoming severely lightheaded or dizzy, they have people in place to come and attend to you and all of the materials, including epinephrine, to be able to resuscitate you right there and right then. If it doesn't happen in the first 15 minutes of vaccination, it's not going to happen. So if you do have allergies, if you're allergic to penicillin, if you're allergic to certain antibiotics, if you're allergic to certain blood pressure medications, food products, bee stings, peanuts, if you're not required to carry an EpiPen by your primary care provider, if you've never had a type of allergic reaction that's landed you in the hospital, then it's safe for you to go ahead and get vaccinated, knowing that there's a backup plan there in case you get into trouble. Along those same lines, I introduced my nurse practitioner, Jamie, in an earlier video. Next video, which will be in a couple of weeks, she's going to have the opportunity to sit in front of the camera and start talking to you about some preventative measures. Diet, exercise, certain supplements that you can use. She's even going to talk a little bit about things that you can do in terms of personal hygiene to try and keep yourself from becoming infected. And for those of you who have not been vaccinated, this is going to be a very, very important topic for you. I always will encourage you to become vaccinated, but if you, for whatever reason, can't be vaccinated or just refuse to be vaccinated for your own personal reasons, I want to be able to help equip you to be able to be the best you that you can be so that you don't end up falling ill to a point where you have to come see me in the hospital. So in 2 weeks, you're going to see Jamie, and Jamie's going to have some great tips. Moving forward, I'm also going to have some other guests on people who have demonstrated to me by their own practice and the way they conduct themselves that they know how to stay clean, if you will, or stay sanitized, how to properly sanitize your home, how to properly sanitize the things that you utilize on a day-to-day basis, proper mask wearing, proper use of gloves, when to use them, when not to use them, and so that they can also give you some tips how to best protect yourself if you are not vaccinated. God bless you. I look forward to continuing to hear from you. Keep posting those questions for me, okay? The more questions you give, the more content I have to discuss in future videos. Don't forget to hit the like and the subscribe button below and hit that bell down there so that you can get notifications as we post new videos. God bless you and have a great day. Now, let me break that down a little bit further. What does messenger RNA do? Messenger RNA goes into your cells and it tells your cells protein synthesizing apparatus, what they call the ribosomes, to produce certain proteins. Welcome to Getting Understanding with Dr. Darrell Ellis. As usual, I'm your host, Dr. Darrell Ellis, and I'm going to be talking to you a little bit more about what's going on in the world of COVID here in the United States. The other question that I had is sort of along the same lines. A lot of times when I talk to patients in my practice who haven't been vaccinated, I ask them, well, why not? A lot of people's response is, because I'm scared of the vaccine. And when I try to dig in a little bit deeper in terms of what it is about this particular vaccine that scares them, they say, well, I don't know what's in it. Well, my response to that is that I can definitely explain to you exactly what's in it. And there's nothing in there that you should be afraid of. The reason why I say that is because what they're using in the particularly mRNA vaccinations, the Moderna and the Pfizer form of vaccine, is just a synthesized piece of your own messenger RNA. It's a molecule that's produced by every single cell in your body. So it's not something that is seen to be foreign material, which is why when you first get the vaccination, unless you have one of those severe allergic reactions, your body won't respond to the vaccine itself. When you develop side effects to the vaccine, when you develop some body aches, fevers, perhaps some fatigue, and in some cases even a little bit of shortness of breath, it's not to the actual molecule that's being injected into you. It's the response is to the antibody that is being produced against the protein that the vaccine is signaling for your cells to produce. Now, let me break that down a little bit further. What does messenger RNA do? Messenger RNA goes into your cells and it tells your cells protein synthesizing apparatus, what they call the ribosomes, to produce certain proteins. In this case, this mRNA vaccine is signaling your cells to produce a specific protein that is almost identical to the protein that sits on the surface of the COVID-19 virus. In doing that, you are producing this protein and your antibody response, your defense system, sees it as a foreign protein and it begins developing antibodies against it so that it can kill it because it says this is not natural for us to see this protein. By doing that, you now have a revved up antibody response against COVID-19 should it try to attack your body. And the specific protein is an important one because without that protein, if that protein is disabled by your antibody response, the COVID-19 virus cannot get access to your cells and cannot cause infection. Since it can't cause infection, it can't cause illness. That's the way that these vaccines work. So they're not putting anything in you that is going to harm you. It's not anything really that's even foreign to your body. It's something that's tricking your body into believing that it's been invaded, even though it hasn't been invaded yet, so that when the invasion occurs, it's ready to fight back ahead of the actual viral infection. Along those same lines, I introduced my nurse practitioner, Jamie, in an earlier video. Next video, which will be in a couple of weeks, she's going to have the opportunity to sit in front of the camera and start talking to you about some preventative measures: diet, exercise, certain supplements that you can use. She's even going to talk a little bit about things that you can do in terms of personal hygiene to try and keep yourself from becoming infected. And for those of you who have not been vaccinated, this is going to be a very, very important topic for you. I always will encourage you to become vaccinated, but if you, for whatever reason, can't be vaccinated or just refuse to be vaccinated for your own personal reasons, I want to be able to help equip you to be able to be the best you that you can be, so that you don't end up falling ill to a point where you have to come see me in the hospital. So in 2 weeks, you're going to see Jamie, and Jamie's going to have some great tips. Moving forward, I'm also going to have some other guests on. People who have demonstrated to me by their own practice and the way they conduct themselves that they know how to stay clean, if you will, or stay sanitized, how to properly sanitize your home, how to properly sanitize the things that you utilize on a day-to-day basis, proper mask wearing, proper use of gloves, when to use them, when not to use them, and so that they can also give you some tips how to best protect yourself if you are not vaccinated. God bless you. I look forward to continuing to hear from you. Keep posting those questions for me, okay? The more questions you give, the more content I have to discuss in future videos. Don't forget to hit the like and the subscribe button below, and hit that bell down there so that you can get notifications as we post new videos. God bless you and have a great day. If you're already debilitated, if you've got diabetes that's poorly controlled, your immune system is already being suppressed and you're at increased risk. Welcome to Getting Understanding with Dr. Darrell Ellis. As usual, I'm your host, Dr. Darrell Ellis, and I'm going to be talking to you a little bit more about what's going on in the world of COVID here in the United States. One of the other questions that I've heard is if I've got certain types of illnesses, high blood pressure, heart disease, lung disease, COPD, history of lupus, or other kind of autoimmune disorders, should I not take the vaccine? Well, the answer is you absolutely should. And the reason for that is that you're exactly the type of patient that needs to be vaccinated. If you were to catch the COVID-19 virus, your risk of having significant problems from that infection, significant bilateral pneumonias, respiratory compromise, require ventilator management, and even at higher risk for mortality or death, is at a much higher rate than people who don't have those very same illnesses at baseline. That's number one, your vaccination. Number two is that you've got to be sure that you're following with your primary care physician or specialty physician, if indeed you see one for your specific problem, to be sure that your disease is being managed as well as possible, okay? If you're already debilitated, if you've got diabetes that's poorly controlled, your immune system is already being suppressed and you're at increased risk. If you've got a history of heart disease, you are already in a position where you've got diffuse inflammation in your body and your immune system is being depressed and you're at increased risk. If you have a history of chronic lung disease, part of what the lung does is it produces its own immune system within the lung. And if you're not being taken care of properly, your immune system is being depressed in the very area where this viral infection is planning to attack. So it's very important that if you get vaccinated, and even if you don't get vaccinated, that you are sure to take the very best care of yourself that you possibly can, particularly if you have chronic disease. I strongly encourage you to be vaccinated in that case, though, because you're exactly the type of patient that we don't want to end up having to see in the emergency room or have to hospitalize. So please take care of yourself. Along those same lines, I introduced my nurse practitioner, Jamie, in an earlier video. Next video, which will be in a couple of weeks, she's going to have the opportunity to sit in front of the camera and start talking to you about some preventative measures: diet, exercise, certain supplements that you can use. She's even going to talk a little bit about things that you can do in terms of personal hygiene to try and keep yourself from becoming infected. And for those of you who have not been vaccinated, this is going to be a very, very important topic for you. I always will encourage you to become vaccinated, but if you, for whatever reason, can't be vaccinated or just refuse to be vaccinated for your own personal reasons, I want to be able to help equip you to be able to be the best you that you can be so that you don't end up falling ill to a point where you have to come see me in the hospital. So in 2 weeks, you're going to see Jamie, and Jamie's going to have some great tips. Moving forward, I'm also going to have some other guests on. People who have demonstrated to me by their own practice and the way they conduct themselves that they know how to stay clean, if you will, or stay sanitized, how to properly sanitize your home, how to properly sanitize the things that you utilize on a day-to-day basis, proper mask wearing, proper use of gloves, when to use them, when not to use them, and so that they can also give you some tips how to best protect yourself if you are not vaccinated. God bless you. I look forward to continuing to hear from you. Keep posting those questions for me, okay? The more questions you give, the more content I have to discuss in future videos. Don't forget to hit the like and the subscribe button below and hit that bell down there so that you can get notifications as we post new videos. God bless you and have a great day. Welcome to Getting Understanding with Dr. Darrell Ellis. I'm your host, Dr. Darrell Ellis, and we're going to be continuing our conversation today, but with a little bit of a different approach regarding COVID-19, and particularly COVID-19 vaccinations, as well as things that need to be done and things that shouldn't be done with respect to the treatment approach, as well as ongoing prevention of COVID-19 once you have chosen either to be vaccinated or not to be vaccinated. To help me in this process, I've invited a very special guest to be with us today. Her name is Mrs. Danita Lloyd. Danita is a patient of mine, yes, but even more importantly, she is a sister of mine. We have basically come up together here in Columbus, Georgia as church brother and sister, to the point where she's the godmother of my children, and I'm the godfather of her children. So we've known each other for quite some time and have grown close in many, many ways. But the reason why I asked Danita to come and be with us today is because of her own special qualifications. Danita is the former Director of Communications for AFLAC here in Columbus, Georgia. It's a very high and lofty post. She is well educated. She's an excellent communicator and an educator. And she's very much involved in the community in Columbus, Georgia, and in Phoenix City, particularly the African-American community, with some of her own business interests, as well as some of her own personal interests here in Columbus and Phoenix City. So she has her finger on the pulse of what's going on in the community here. She brought to me some questions and some concerns that are related to the vaccination process. More specifically, here in the African-American community in Columbus and Phoenix City, in terms of the very, very low vaccination rates and some of the resistance in the African-American community to becoming vaccinated based upon a number of different issues. So I decided to put the two of us here together, to put this together more as a question and answer type of video, as opposed to me just spouting off a bunch of information and facts, so that we can make it more interactive and hopefully stimulate the people who are watching this to also interact with us. If there are things that we don't touch on, if there are questions that we do not answer, or questions that are not asked, this would be an opportunity for you to be able to interact with us and let us know that there's additional information that you're requiring or additional information that you're just wondering about to help you make a decision and or help you convey this information to others who are in the process of making their own decision. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to give the floor to Danita. She's going to kind of open it up with some questions. We're going to go back and forth, and hopefully this will be not only informative, but a little bit entertaining for you.
Amen. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Darrell. I appreciate being here. My partner, my brother in health. I think it's always been important to me to have you as a doctor because of the partnership and the fact that I can ask questions. And you've always helped me to get a clearer layman's understanding of things. And I think a lot of what's happening right now in the African American community in particular, now I know the community at large, but I'm really focused right now because I see so much happening within our communities. By the way, I was at TSIS for all those years, 15 years. I love the duck, but I was at TSIS for many years. But let me just say this.
My mistake.
No worries, no worries. I love the Aflac. But I want to just say that recently I've been really devastated by so many folks that I love that have been impacted by COVID. And I've been vaccinated at your guidance, your direction for me. My entire family's been vaccinated again at your guidance, your direction for us. And what I'm seeing though is that there's so many folks who are still on the fence. One thing that I've been hearing a lot about is that the folks that's filling up the hospital beds right now are largely unvaccinated. So help me convey, because I've been out here really pushing and asking and talking to people about the importance of vaccination. Does it mean 100% you won't get it? No. But what does vaccination do for you? And can we talk about the vaccination rates that are in our community?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll start with the data, if you will. I did a little bit of research this morning looking specifically at the vaccination rates both in Russell County here, which is Phoenix City and the county surrounding Phoenix City, and Muskogee County, which is the county in which Columbus, Georgia sits. And I want to compare those with what the nationwide vaccination rates are. Nationwide, what we see is about 65% of eligible people, that's children from the age of 12 on up through adults, 65% have been fully vaccinated. However, we'll start with Columbus, Georgia and Muskogee County. In Muskogee County, that rate is closer to about 40%, just above 40%. Now, in Russell County, it's even worse. It's only about 30%, and this is data from the Alabama Department of Public Health from yesterday. 30.43% of the eligible population in Russell County, Alabama, have been fully vaccinated. Now, to put that in further perspective, and I think I may have mentioned this in a previous video, that in order for us to be able to be in a position as a country, as a community, and as a people, in order for us to be in a position where we are no longer being run by this virus, for lack of a better way of putting it, we need to get our vaccination rates up to about 70 to 80%. Nationwide, we're getting close. The state of Alabama trails the entire nation in terms of its vaccination rates. And the county of Russell County, in which I practice, is the lowest vaccinated county in the entire state of Alabama. So we're looking at a situation where we are a setup for some serious problems in terms of the degree of suffering and the degree of death that's going to affect us right here in this local community, based upon a resistance, a hesitance to go forward with that which we now know, not just here in this state or in Georgia or in the United States, but what we now know worldwide as the most effective way of preventing the spread and preventing the morbidity or sickness and mortality, death from this viral infection, and that's through vaccination. We've resisted it. And there are a bunch of different reasons why I think that that resistance is still prevalent. I think that there is certainly a gap in trust between the people of this country and, number one, the government, which is promoting the vaccination process and is providing the vaccines so that they're free and available to everybody in this country, and the people and the healthcare community that is also trying to promote this vaccination effort. There are a lot of conversations about, well, you know, this is all about politics, and this is all about the fact that the drug companies that produce the vaccines are in cahoots with the government, and they're going to make billions and billions of dollars off of this vaccine, and even more when they recommend and promote a booster to the first two vaccines. And as much as that may be true, it doesn't change the fact that this is still, again, not just in this country, but worldwide, now known to be the most effective way to slow and stop ultimately the spread of this very dangerous viral infection. The people who I know, and I'll use myself as an example just because it's best to use yourself as an example and not speak for other people. The reason why I'm in medicine has nothing to do with politics. It has nothing to do with really making a whole lot of money, because I was encouraged throughout my education that if I really wanted to get rich and make a lot of money, then I should not go into medicine. There are other things I should do. I should go into business. I should go into finance. I should go into real estate. There are a bunch of different ways to make a lot of money. It was really about being able to impact my community to become healthier, to have greater access to the health care that is available in this country from the front lines. My motivation to go into medicine was based on a series of very unfortunate things, where I encountered the healthcare system as a young man on the opposite side of the healthcare system and saw how we were brushed off, saw how we were treated in a certain way because we looked a certain way, saw how we didn't get the type of treatment that was not only necessary, but was potentially life-saving because we had encountered the healthcare system through the emergency department times before for the same thing. Right. In that case, it was fighting and some other stuff, and saw unnecessary death as a result of just not being acknowledged, and that's something that inspired me, along with a desire to, be able to work with people and a ability to really integrate science and information really well, which is a blessing of the Lord. And I put the two together, and becoming a doctor is what it all turned into. I'm not in this because I want to hurt anybody.
Right.
I'm not in this because I want to influence people to do things according to a plan that has anything to do with anything other than trying to help people be as healthy and as happy and as productive as they possibly can be.
Well, Dr. Darrell, I've heard people say, well, my faith is strong. It's almost as if they're saying, my faith is so strong that I don't need the medicine. And it's as if the two cannot coexist together. I know you as a man of God. I come in, we have our appointments, you pray with me, and you'll write me a prescription if I need that prescription.
Yes, amen.
And so they're not mutually exclusive. Can we speak to that for a moment? Because I've heard a lot that, again, my faith is so strong, I know that I won't get COVID, or if I get COVID, my faith is so strong and my body's strong enough, it can fight it off. Yeah. This vaccination is not just about you and your ability to fight it off, but those around you that you love and what you may be bringing to them. So can you speak to the faith piece, and then also about why we should be getting vaccinated in the first place?
Absolutely. In addition to being a physician, I'm also an ordained minister.
Absolutely.
And so I can speak to both the faith and to the natural as it pertains to not just this, but a bunch of different aspects of medicine. And specifically, the Bible is very clear about the fact that faith without works is dead.
It's dead.
That having faith for a thing, yet not being willing to take on the responsibility in the natural realm to do what you know to do, to allow that which you are believing for to manifest in your life, is contrary to God's will and contrary to God's word. I had a conversation with a man of God not too long ago who talked to me about how, he knows that when the Lord calls him home, there's nothing anybody or anything can do to stop him from going to be with the Lord. And as true as that is a part of God's plan for us, God also has been very clear about the fact that he has two wills for each and every individual life. It's his perfect will for us, that which he would have us manifest, that which he would have us do, those who he would have us touch, and how long he would have us here on earth to accomplish those things that he's prepared us for. Now, outside of his perfect will for our lives is his permissive will for our lives.
Right.
That permissive will comes into play because he also gave us the power of choice. It says, choose ye this day who you will serve. I pray that you choose life, that you would have it more abundantly to the full until it overflows. Each and every day we have a choice as to what we eat, what we drink,
Right.
when we move, when we choose not to move, who we choose to associate with, when we choose to follow God's word and God's will, and when we choose to use the wisdom that he gave us to be able to interact with him to get clarity on the things that he is guiding us to do. Now, why am I even bringing all of that up? Because there is nothing on this earth that is revealed to man through knowledge except it be motivated by him. Nothing. The ability to be able to come up with a vaccination process,
Amen.
to be able to prevent the spread of this viral infection that is killing hundreds of thousands and millions of people worldwide, many of whom are believers, many of them who call themselves children of God, and in many cases are children of God, servants of God, are dying needlessly before their time because they have chosen not to use that which he has made available to us.
That's right.
To allow his perfect will to manifest in our life as it pertains to this. He sent his son to have life, that we should have life.
More abundant.
And have it more abundantly to the full until it overflows. He did not send his son that we should have sickness. He did not send his son that we should have death prematurely. He does not send his son so that we can make decisions that put the lives of others at risk. You know, I mean, one of the things that I think that, I mentioned it in a previous video, Danita, and I'm going to bring it up again now, is that I consider vaccination, mask wearing, and mitigation not only a personal responsibility, but I consider it to be a public health responsibility.
Absolutely.
Because it affects more than just you as an individual. You know, there are a lot of people running around talking about their individual rights and how you can't force them to do this and can't force them to do that. Truth is, ultimately, you can be forced to do a lot of things that you may not want to do if it's for the public good.
The public good.
Go into a movie theater and yell fire and see where that lands you.
Right.
Get you a new sports car and decide you're going to drive 130 miles an hour on the freeway and see where that lands you. It's your right, but there are responsibilities when you take that personal right and extend it to a point where it puts other people at risk. So I think people need to take another look at that whole approach in terms of why they have chosen not to become vaccinated for their own personal reasons.
Well, Doc, I don't know what's in it. I don't know what's in that vaccine, so how dare you tell me to take this vaccine? I don't know what's in it.
Well, there's a lot of things we don't know what's
Okay.
in. We don't know what's in them Coca-Colas.
We don't.
We don't know what's in the preservatives in the food that we eat. Mm-hmm. We don't know what's in the particulates that are floating around in the air that we breathe day after day after day. We don't know what's in a lot of the medications that we're already taking, whether they be over the counter or whether they be by prescription. We don't know, in many cases, what's in a lot of the natural products that we're taking to try and help to make ourselves healthier and or prevent ourselves from getting sick. How many of you know what's in ginkgo biloba?
Okay.
Or what the actual pharmacologic effects of ginkgo biloba are? How many of you know what's in saw palmetto? How many of you know what's in some of the vitamins and how those vitamins, if taken incorrectly or in the incorrect amounts, what kind of side effects and damage that can cause to your body? Most of us don't.
We don't know what's in Robitussin, and we have that faithfully in our cabinets to take Robitussin. The first little thing, cough, cough, Robitussin.
And it's less what you know is in there, and it's more whether you trust the people who are recommending it to you. And I think that's what it's come down to in a lot of cases. It's just a matter of distrust, a disconnect. There are two different thoughts now in terms of this is what's best for me and you can't tell me otherwise. Right. Even though you may or may not have the knowledge or the wisdom to know that this is or is not better for you. Mm-hmm. You know, which is why, again, I encourage through this medium that people ask questions. Right. Talk to me about what it is that's got you so convinced that this is something that's not in your best interest, number one, or number two, even potentially harmful to you. You know, I've heard people say that, what about the long-term side effects of the vaccination? There are none. Well, how do you know that? It's been out for such a short period of time. Right. Well, we've been vaccinating the public for 70 years now. Right. And there are no long-term effects to vaccines. Why? Because vaccines are designed to get in your body, cause a biologic response that allows you to be able to fight off a specific infection, and then it's out of your body because it gets denatured within about 48 hours. The mRNA vaccines are exactly the same way. The actual mRNA particle that they put into your body, it's a protein. It's a synthetic protein.
And your body is designed to break down proteins within about 48 hours. It's in and it's out. But in that 48-hour period, it signals your cells to produce another protein, which is then what's signaling your immune response to develop antibodies against this specific virus. It's the antibodies that remain in your system.
Right.
Something that's already in your system. It's not a foreign material. The foreign material's long been gone.
So what if they say, well, I've already had COVID, so I don't have to get it because now I am immune. What about that?
Well, what are you immune to is the question. Do you know what variant that you had? Probably not. And there's more than one variant that's circulating.
Right.
Your immunity will be more specific to the specific variant that you contracted at the time of your illness, which is why the recommendation is that even if you have contracted COVID-19, that you go ahead and get vaccinated. Now, what makes the vaccine any better in terms of protection than your natural immunity? Well, it's broader. It's a broader immunity because it does not produce an antibody response just to a specific viral protein. It produces an antibody response to the viral protein that is ubiquitous for coronaviruses. Every coronavirus, whether it's Delta, Mu, Lambda, or the original one, have the same spike protein on the surface of the virus that allows it to gain access into your cells and produce infection. The reason why the vaccine is so effective at preventing illness is because even though you may contract the virus, it can't get into your cells and get you sick.
Gotcha.
Now, it's not a perfect vaccine. It's 95 to 98% effective. So 2 to 5% of people who've been vaccinated are still at risk to get sick.
And I'm glad you said that because people seem to think, well, if I get the vaccine, it means I can't get COVID at all.
No.
So speak to that a little bit more because people are under that misimpression.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's a misinterpretation of what the vaccine is supposed to do and how effectively it's supposed to do that. It's not perfect,
right?
Which is why the recommendation is even in the vaccinated population at this point, there was some pushback about that early on in the vaccination process. But now it's very well known that even in the vaccinated population, social distancing and mask wearing is an important part of the overall preventive efforts because you can still contract the virus even though you've been vaccinated. And if you're not wearing the proper masking, if you're not practicing social distancing, you can give it to other people.
Right.
Okay? And there's that small percentage of vaccinated people who can still get sick from it, sick enough to require hospitalization and then sometimes even death.
So the vaccine gives you a fighting chance. It at least gives you something to work with as opposed to just your body in its own natural state trying to fight it off on its own.
Correct.
The vaccine gives you a fighting chance.
It's another level of protection. You know, there are a lot of military analogies with respect to this pandemic because in many ways we're fighting a war right now, and the war that we're fighting is against an invisible enemy. But when you go to battle, if you have the opportunity to equip yourself with as much armor, as much armament, meaning that you don't go to war with just a pistol, you go to war with a pistol and a knife and an AK and whatever else you can carry to be sure that you are as prepared for the battle in front of you as you possibly can be. And that includes body armor.
That's right.
Because, you know, I don't know anybody who's ever been in a fight who ain't never got hit. You know,
but you get hit, you can shake it off.
You got to be ready to be able to take a blow as well as be able to give a blow when you get ready to go to battle.
That's right.
Same thing is true on this battle that we're facing right now. We're not telling you just to get vaccinated, or we're not asking you just to get vaccinated. We're asking you to get vaccinated. We're asking you to wear masks. We're asking you to social distance. We're actually asking you to continue to do proper hand sanitization. We're asking you to sanitize your area well when you've when other people have been in your area or when you've gone outside that area and come back. Sanitize your phone when you take it into other places. Sanitize the things that you bring into your home that has already been sanitized before you left your home. We're asking you to do all these things as additional layers of protection from you getting sick or you potentially getting someone else sick. So the vaccine, however, seems to be the most effective way of preventing illness and death from this virus. The numbers are through the roof here in this county.
I know, I've heard about it, that it's the hospitals are so full and they're full of folks largely who have been unvaccinated.
Absolutely.
So this is the thing that is troubling to me. we keep saying it's about the science, it's about the science. Well, I don't know about the science. I don't know about the science. I don't know about the science. So you don't get vaccinated. But then you go to that very hospital that has the medical professionals who are working tirelessly day in and day out, using the science to help treat you. You didn't believe the science to get a vaccine, but you believe the science to go to that ER and to be in that hospital and to get all the medical care and attention from those nurses, the CNAs, the doctors, everybody that's there. So I'm just trying to understand where the conflict is. You don't believe this science, but you believe this science. What's going on?
Well, that's a great question, and that's a question that still resonates in my mind. You know, you don't trust the vaccine, yet once you get sick and you're having a difficult time breathing, you come to the hospital for us to give you treatments that are less proven and in many cases less effective than the vaccine would have been to prevent you from getting sick in the first place. Right. And that's the truth of it, is that, and this is a very common phrase, an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. You know, and we have a very potent ounce of prevention out there, which people are refusing to take, and then they're coming to receive this pound of cure that we can offer them, when those of us who are doing this know that your chances of getting better once you get really sick with this thing are much lower than your chances of not getting sick if you just practice the proper prevention, including vaccination.
That's right.
And, you know, what we thought we knew early on in the pandemic is not what we're faced with now because of this new variant. You know, what we thought we knew is that it was the elderly and the sick who were at greatest risk of falling into serious illness and death from this virus. Those people are still very much at great risk. But those happen to be the people who have been the most vaccinated portion of our population. So they're not the ones who we're seeing in the hospital. I've got people ranging from 14 years old to 75 years old who are in the hospital now, some of which are on ventilators, some of which who are just on high flow oxygen, all of whom are receiving the IV antivirals and the steroids that we can give them, fighting for their lives. And I'm seeing death every day right here in Phoenix City, Alabama. And 98% of those who are in that hospital have been unvaccinated, whether they're 14 years old or whether they're 7. I actually admitted a woman yesterday who's 93 years old. And I asked her if she'd been vaccinated. And her word to me, as she was gasping for breath, was that I should have been, but I didn't. And I didn't get a chance to go into the conversation with her in terms of why, because at that point it was irrelevant.
Right.
You know, now we've got to go into treatment mode and pray that we'll be able to keep this woman here for her family and her loved ones.
Amen.
And I think that the case needs to be made that in most cases, well, in the majority of cases that I see, in patients who do have comorbid medical conditions, whether it's high blood pressure, diabetes, autoimmune disorders, it's the people who are not doing what you just said, who are not following the recommendations, they're not keeping their blood pressure under control, they're not monitoring their sugar, they're not keeping their sugar under control, and in some cases they don't even know they have these comorbid medical conditions, and then COVID strikes.
Right. It's the prayer, it's the medication, it's all the things you're doing, but number one thing is vaccination. People are not taking it as seriously, or they think they have time. I've read many stories of folks saying, I planned on getting vaccinated, but in the process of planning to get vaccinated, they got COVID. And many of whom, I mean, I've seen cases where it's been the husband and the wife who both passed, leaving behind children, leaving behind loved ones because they had planned to get vaccinated, thought they had time to get vaccinated, but they didn't do it.
Right.
And so now you got so many folks where they're trying to plan funerals and things of the nature where they thought they had more time. They thought they had, I'm going to do my research. And what is this research that folks keep swearing they're doing? It's not as if they're going into some laboratory. A lot of times what I am hearing and some of the things I've seen is these conspiracy theories. And, I can just take, this is one, I can just take hydrochloroquine, or what is that? That
It's hydroxychloroquine or
Hydroxychloroquine.
ivermectin.
Okay. What is
Once you,
that? Talk about that.
well, they're two different things. Hydroxychloroquine is something that President Trump initially was very much supportive of when there were some early studies that showed that it might be helpful in terms of decreasing viral load in patients who contracted COVID-19. However, once they did the research thoroughly and did it properly with double-blind studies and those kind of things, hydroxychloroquine shows no benefit in terms of either prevention or treatment of COVID-19. And indeed, the opposite is what they found to be true. Hydroxychloroquine, if not prescribed and taken properly, has significant risk of causing problems with cardiac rhythm disturbances and sudden cardiac death, as well as kidney problems in those who take it. So it not only does not provide benefit, but there's significant risk associated with its use. Ivermectin is actually a medication that's out there for animals. It's an antiparasitic that we use for horses and cows and large animals to deworm them when they contract worms in their gastrointestinal system. It has absolutely nothing to do with viral management. It has nothing to do with viral prevention. It has nothing to do with viral treatment, to the point where every healthcare professional who is in any position of accountability is downplaying and encouraging people not to fall into the hype of ivermectin. Because just like what I explained with hydroxychloroquine, not only is there no evidence that it's effective in the treatment of COVID-19, there are significant risks to you taking a animal product and trying to use it on you personally. You know, the way that they formulate this ivermectin, because it's for large animals, is very concentrated. And you can think that you're taking a smaller amount and you're getting a whole lot more than you think you're going to get. And you can end up with liver failure, you can end up with kidney failure, you can end up with a metabolic acidosis. It can cause a lot of problems with you and it can kill you. Right. Not to mention the fact that it's not going to help you with your COVID-19. Now, there's a lot of anecdotal stuff out there where you hear people saying that they have friends or they've had family members, they've had cousins who contracted COVID-19 and then went to a homeopathic physician or to someone else and they gave them some hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin and they got better. Well, I'm here to tell you that the chances are if they had taken nothing at all, they probably would have gotten better anyway. It was not the ivermectin, nor was it the hydroxychloroquine that got them better. It was just the fact that they were in that percentage of people who developed mild illness. And the majority of people who contract COVID-19 will have mild illness. However, there's that minority of people, and we no longer have a good, clear delineation of who's who now, who will progress to very serious illness and death. And those are the people who we're trying to protect. Those are the people that we're trying to get to. Even if you, again, Danita, have contracted COVID-19 and you had mild illness, you have a responsibility to people around you. Absolutely. To try and keep them from being in that percentage of people who will progress to more serious illness and possibly cause death in folks who may be very close to you. Right. You know, by getting yourself protected, vaccinated, and practicing proper mitigation to help get this thing back in the box so that we can go back to a life that we're all more used to. Absolutely. And I got season tickets to the Alabama football games, and I got to make a decision every Saturday whether I'm going to go into that stadium or not.
I know you want their Tide to roll, but you know, we Clemson Tigers over here. You know, so really, truthfully, the vaccine is really about love. Yes. Love for yourself, of course, because you want to be here for your family and for your friends and to live the life, but also love for your fellow man.
There you go.
Because just because I'm strong enough and healthy enough and I can fight it off myself and I maybe have minor symptoms like it's a cold, you know, if I'm around somebody else whose system is not as strong as mine, and because of me, they get it, and they've got all these other pre-existing conditions, they might not be able to fight it off.
That is correct.
Like I could.
That is correct.
And so I think so many folks just are not getting that piece. You know, it's my freedom. It's my personal choice. It is. but think about those that you love, and think about, I know right now you can vaccinate 12 and older, but think about, I've been seeing stories now about children.
Absolutely.
Children getting it.
Absolutely.
Toddlers and babies and middle schoolers and so getting it. And so I don't know what it's going to take, but one thing I do know is that I want to bring it back home to the African American community.
Yes.
You're a Black man.
Yes.
You've gone to school. You studied. You're a man of God, anointed. What is it going to take within our communities for us to turn this tide? I mean, I know we always point back to Tuskegee. Oh, there's a whole history of mistrust within the African American community and the government and the medical community and so forth. But I'm looking at you, because man of God, Black man, been my doctor for well over a decade now. I can talk to you. I can ask questions. You'll break it down, because sometimes you throw out those words. I'm like, what you say, Doc? And you'll break it down in layman's terms. Is it that we need to encourage more of our folks to have that type of rapport, make sure they got a doctor? What is it going to take for us to turn the tide in the African American community?
I think that's exactly why I'm here now. And that's why I started this whole YouTube channel, is because, the Lord revealed to me a long time ago that my role was to serve as a bridge. We have faith for healing. We have faith for deliverance from things that are leading us down a path away from healing and health and wholeness. But what we are missing in many cases is a bridge to help protect us while we're building our faith to receive that healing, while we're building our faith and operating in a sense of sanctification to the point where the full manifestation of God's perfect will for our life can happen. As a physician who is also a man of faith, it was revealed to me that I'm to be a bridge to take people from where they are to where it is that God has called them to be, where there can be full manifestation, and try and help prevent them from falling into the traps that are out there laid by the enemy.
That's right.
That can take us out of here before there's full manifestation of God's purpose for our life of being here.
That's right.
I feel now that I'm called to be the same bridge between our community, people who look like me and you, who have this deep-seated mistrust of the medical community and people who are in a position of, I guess, authority, for lack of a better way of putting it, so that we can bridge that gap, so that we can bring people back into a situation where they can understand that we're not trying to hurt them.
That's right.
I'm not trying to hurt anybody. And that's kind of why I opened up the way that I opened up earlier, is that my goal is to try and help you to stay as healthy and safe and whole as long as possible, to the greatest degree that's in my power as a medical professional. I want to be able to get people to a point where they can start to trust again, whether it's because it comes from somebody who looks like me and you,
That's right,
or whether it comes from someone who knows the Word of God and tries to live the Word of God, and seeks His direction, prays before I touch people every morning, and thanks Him for the opportunity to do so every evening. Whether it's because of my faith, or whether it's because of my ethnicity, or whether it's because of my background, because I ain't always been no doctor.
I
done came up around the way.
That's right.
I know what it is to feel like, people telling you what to do, and I ain't going to do that. That's the man trying to tell me what to do.
Right.
I've been through all that, and that's not where I'm coming from. I'm coming from what I know that I know that I know is going to help us. We're dying 3.5 times more than the general population. And we are the lowest immunized community in this nation. Wow. So we're setting ourselves up.
We are, because one thing I do know to be true is within our community, we're dealing with a higher prevalence of obesity, high blood pressure. What else? Tell us those things. And so all those things compounded, and you add COVID on top of it, then it's taking us out.
Absolutely. Diabetes and obesity-related illnesses, cancers, certain autoimmune diseases, sarcoid disease, lupus, all of those things occur at a higher rate in the African American community than they do in the general population. And, part of what the goal of this YouTube channel is to integrate some of the preventive measures, not only against COVID, but also against ongoing chronic illnesses.
That's
or
right.
prevention as well as treatment of ongoing chronic illnesses so that we can be healthier overall. Because this ain't going to be the last pandemic we
It's
face.
not.
This is
No.
not going to be the last time that, we're going to have to be as strong and as healthy as we possibly can in order that we'll be able to, again, stick around here long enough to fulfill God's will for our lives.
That's right.
So, So what am I doing? I'm going to use myself as an example again. My wife is my greatest counselor when it comes to me staying on top of myself with respect to my diet,
Amen.
making sure that I'm eating the proper types of foods, making sure that I'm eating more live foods than dead foods.
Thank you.
Making sure I'm getting a proper amount of nutrients, taking my vitamins, drinking enough water, getting enough rest, making sure that I'm getting some exercise in to make sure that my body is continuing to move forward. The greatest thing that you can do to build your immune system is exercise. I mean, that goes 100 times further than taking zinc or vitamin D or a bunch of other different things that people are now doing because it's in vogue to try and boost their immune system. Exercise, drinking plenty of water, and getting enough sleep are going to take you a lot farther in terms of prevention of disease than a lot of this other stuff that, I see on social media, and I have people come to my office telling me they're doing to try and help prevent themselves from getting sick. He gave us all the tools.
He gave us the tools.
Now we need to use the wisdom to utilize those tools.
We need to eat as close to the Garden of Eden as possible. So your point about live foods, that's important.
Absolutely.
We're eating too much fried stuff.
Yeah.
We're eating too much sugary stuff. And so this is the thing I've heard people say. Well, they're inflating COVID rates anyway because he didn't really die of that. He died of his high blood pressure. Well, guess what? He was living with his high blood pressure because he was taking his medication. What triggered and messed up his high blood pressure was when he got that COVID, and it went on and did the rest of the job. See, one thing people say, well, it's not COVID, it's all these other things. And that may be true, but all those pre-existing conditions, and you add COVID on top of it, it takes you out that much quicker.
Correct. And I think that the case needs to be made that in most cases, in the majority of cases that I see, in patients who do have comorbid medical conditions, whether it's high blood pressure, diabetes, autoimmune disorders, it's the people who are not doing what you just said, who are not following the recommendations, they're not keeping their blood pressure under control, they're not monitoring their sugar, they're not keeping their sugar under control, and in some cases, they don't even know they have these comorbid medical conditions, and then COVID strikes.
Right.
And then COVID comes into an environment where it can basically run roughshod over your whole body because your body is ill prepared to defend itself against what's happening. Right. I'm going to use the warfare analogy again. If you take a battalion of soldiers and you don't feed them,
right?
You don't give them you don't give them any rest, you're not exercising them, you're not drilling them, you're not preparing them for the battle, and then you throw them into battle, they will be overwhelmed very quickly.
Right.
Overwhelmed very
Excellent
quickly.
Example.
The same thing is true when it comes to facing infection. Not just COVID-19, any infectious process. It could be pneumococcal pneumonia, it could be the flu, it could be any number of different things. If your body is ill-equipped to fight back, then it doesn't take much to overcome you once you're faced with an enemy that is designed to destroy you. And that's what this thing is designed to do. It's to take you out, man. It wants to use your body as a vessel to replicate itself. It don't care nothing about what happens to you once it's done replicating itself, because once you're dead, it's going to look for somebody else to infect.
Gotcha. So I heard you mention in that sequence of things, you talked about the flu and so on and so forth. Can you or should you get, if you've not gotten the influenza vaccine and the shingles vaccine and all those other vaccines, should you get those, shortly thereafter, before, etc.? Speak to, because I know there's several people out there that have not gotten those vaccines.
Correct.
So can we talk about that for a moment?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, it's very important that you have your vaccines up to date because COVID-19 is not the only thing that potentially you can be affected by.
Right.
Those of us who are from my generation, I'll speak for myself again.
I'm right here with you.
We were pre-chickenpox vaccine. Most of us caught the chickenpox when we were kids. In fact, our parents encouraged us to catch it once one of the kids got it.
That's
the rest
right.
of us
All
had
of
to
them
stay in
get
the
it.
same room. We all got it at the same time. Shingles lives inside of us. That virus that gave us chickenpox never goes away. It hides out in your nerve roots, and later on in life, as your immune system declines, as you get older, it can reactivate and go along nerve roots and cause shingles.
Right.
The vaccine helps prevent that reactivation of the virus. It's a very painful, very, very, very painful malady to get, and it can be prevented. The flu, once again, influenza, another airborne virus that can cause upper respiratory symptoms. Our system is already overwhelmed with the surge of COVID-19 and the Delta variant. If we do not get people immunized against flu and we have a bad flu season this year, there are a lot of people who are going to die without ever getting to the hospital because there's not going to be a hospital for them to go to.
Right.
Unfortunately, what we're seeing now in many cases, and it may refer back to what you were saying about, people dying from things other than COVID, even though they had COVID, is that because our system is so overwhelmed by COVID-19 cases, there are no ICU beds and no specialty care hospitals that have the capacity to take care of patients who have potentially lethal problems that aren't related to COVID-19. I had a patient die in our emergency room just this past week who was septic from something other than COVID-19, and we could not find a single hospital to transfer her to that had the specialists and had the capacity to take care of that degree of illness, and she succumbed to it right there in the emergency department because of the amount of COVID cases that are present. You add to that a bad flu spike this winter, and things are going to get really bad. People with COVID won't be able to get the care they need. People with the flu won't be able to get care they need. And people who have unrelated illnesses who still require hospital level care will not have the care that they need. So it becomes a downward spiral.
That's right.
It becomes a downward spiral. So again, the recommendation and what I encourage is that you get vaccinated to try and keep yourself as healthy as you can against things not just that say COVID-19 on them, but also against other known infectious diseases that can cause you to become sick and require hospital level care. That includes the flu. Now, the timing, if you go ahead and get your COVID-19 vaccine, I recommend that you wait about 2 weeks after or before you get that COVID-19 vaccine before you get another vaccine. They used to say wait a month. Now they're saying you may not have to wait at all. But if you're concerned, the reason why you've waited so long to get vaccinated is that you're concerned about the side effects, I would recommend that you space it out by a couple of weeks so that you don't get the compounded side effects of both a flu shot and a COVID shot at the same time.
Gotcha.
Okay? Side effects are your friend when it comes to vaccination. Let me reiterate that. The side effects indicate the degree of antibody response that you have gotten from the vaccine that you just received. If you get no side effects, then your antibody response might not be vigorous enough to really provide you any protection.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I don't know if I asked this, I can't remember, but if I've gotten COVID already, I haven't, praise the Lord, but if I've gotten COVID already, should I get the vaccine? And if so, how soon can I get the vaccine if I already had COVID?
Right. If you've had COVID-19, the recommendation is that you wait a minimum of 30 days.
30 days.
After you've completed your quarantine period before you receive the COVID-19 vaccine. And the reason for that, again, is really about trying to mitigate the amount of side effects that you get from the vaccination. Because if you've already had the virus, you're going to have a relatively brisk antibody response already in place. And then you elicit a secondary antibody response, you're going to really feel it.
Gotcha.
Unless you give it a little bit of time for that antibody response from the initial infection to wane a little bit. And that's anywhere from 1 to 3 months, depending on what your personal situation is. People who have underlying illnesses, whose immune system is not as robust, those people should get it sooner as opposed to those who have a very strong and robust immune system. They may want to wait a little bit later because it'll take longer for their immune response to wane.
Very good.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. All I am praying for is that there is some understanding that people are getting from listening to this, that they are opening their ears to truly hear. They're listening to a man of God who also is scientific, a medical doctor, and understanding that there's a direct correlation in our health of taking the vaccine so we can remain as healthy as possible. I don't know. It's been devastating that I've had so many family and friends and that have been impacted by this.
Yes.
Some are right now just fighting for their lives, and the prayers they'll make it through. And I guess we need to look at those as cautionary tales of what could happen. Some instances, some of them, have been vaccinated, but then there are other instances where the large majority have not been vaccinated. So that should tell us something. We should learn that lesson that, if we're still out here and we can do it, go get a vaccine. Absolutely. And there are places all around where they're offering the vaccine. Absolutely. and it's free.
Absolutely. For a large part of my career and even during my education, one of the things that was always discussed as a barrier to members of the African American community from getting the type of treatment and the type of prevention that was available is lack of access. Well, that no longer is the case.
We got access.
Access is everywhere. If there's a drugstore in your neighborhood, you can get vaccinated. If there is, in many cases, even a church in your neighborhood,
right,
you can get vaccinated because we're doing vaccines at churches as well. And matter of fact, one of the things that we're looking at doing moving forward is putting together a coalition, if you will, of healthcare professionals and barbers for access to barbershops.
Yes.
Pastors for access to churches, particularly in the African American community, once again to try and help form that bridge between the healthcare system and the systems that we access most frequently in our own communities. Okay, so that you can see that the people who you trust,
that's right,
and have trusted in some cases for generations, your barbers, your pastors, your church friends, believe that what we're telling them and telling you is the truth. Amen. We're not trying to harm you. We're trying to help keep you safe and keep the people that you love safe from you.
So if someone wants to be a part of that coalition, if you got the stylist or the barber or the pastor that wants to be a part of that coalition, how can they get in contact with you?
There's a couple ways to do it. One, you can message me through my YouTube channel. It's called Getting Understanding with Dr. Daryl Ellis. You can send messages to me that way and I can reach back out to you. Or there is a way that you can contact me through my Facebook page. You can get on my Facebook page and it's just my name. I'm still waiting to develop a separate Facebook page.
Yes, we're going to be developing that.
Where specific things pertaining to this can be directed to me. But you can get through to my Facebook page. And it's just my name, Daryl Ellis. And I'm looking forward to hearing from some people because this is something, in my preparation for today's video, I was doing some reading. And I saw that they had an initiative like this through Loma Linda University in California, where they formed a coalition like this. And they saw an exponential increase in the percentage of vaccinated individuals in the African American community there in that Southern California community based upon this coalition and forming that bridge from the healthcare community to the African American community and other minority communities. So I'm looking forward to us being able to get that done. Because again, I'm here for a purpose. Amen. And that purpose is not to cause anybody any harm, but to let you know what I know will be in your best interest.
Well, all I can say is he has been my doctor for well over a decade. I trust him implicitly, explicitly, because he has never steered me wrong. I know that when I come into his office, I'm going to get a good word, a good prayer, a good prescription, some good guidance, some advice. He gave me a good word here. He said, we got to exercise more. I know I got to do that. I got to get my sleep on. I got to work on that as well, and drinking a lot more water. So we got to make sure we're protecting these vessels. God has given them to us for a purpose, and we don't want that purpose to be extinguished before we can fulfill it because COVID or any of these other things have taken us out. But right now our emphasis is on COVID. So, we got to get the understanding. And I just thank you for allowing me to come and have this conversation, because I hear all kinds of stuff. And I'm like, I need to sit down with the man that knows, that can help put it in layman's terms and get the word out to folks. So I thank you for letting me come today.
Amen. Thank you for coming, sis. I tell you, this was great. I really enjoyed this. And like Danita said, I hope that someone got something from this that will help them making a well-informed decision about what's going to be best for them and best for their loved ones. Again, the door is open. I want to hear from you. If there are additional questions or concerns that you have about doing what it is that we're talking about here to help protect yourself, reach out to us. You have my access points through YouTube as well as through Facebook. I don't have a Twitter account, but that's something else that I'm going to be working on. I've never tweeted, but I understand that that's a way to be able to reach people as well and have people be able to reach you as well. I want us to be able to be engaged so that we can start moving in the same direction, so that we can start rowing the boat in the same direction, knowing that that direction is a good one. It's one that will lead to a greater level of health. It will lead to a greater longevity for ourselves as well as the people who we love and care for the most, and for our community. We can't be effective if we're not healthy. God bless you. Don't forget to hit like and hit subscribe so that you can get notifications about future videos as we continue to work toward expanding beyond just COVID-19 and talking about the things that we can do to be able to be sure that we are the healthiest, best forms of ourselves, so that we can do what it is that we've been purposed to do here on earth. It's in Jesus' name I say you. I'll see you next time.